Kia ora, this is a Freedom Radio, a special report on refugees. The latest figures available show that the number of refugees stood at somewhere around 10.4 million people. Now that's an official figure, and real figures could be as high as 100 million people around the world as refugees and internally displaced people. There's roughly another 4.8 million registered refugees that are looked after in some 60 refugee camps in the Middle East by the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East, which was set up in 1949 to care for displaced Palestinians. The question of refugees and refugee camps is enormous. We're very fortunate to be here with Yilma Tafere Tasew to discuss issues of refugees and the conditions inside of refugee camps. Yilma was born and grew up in Ethiopia. He is a teacher by profession, and he left Ethiopia in 1991 in exile to the Kenyan refugee camps. One of those camps was the Kakuma refugee camp. The town of Kakuma is in the northern west part of Kenya. It has hosted the refugee camp since about 1992, and it currently serves more than 179,000 people who have fled wars and violence in the neighboring countries. The majority of the refugees are from South Sudan, and Somalia, and the camp also is host to refugees from Ethiopia, obviously like Yilma, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Burundi, Rwanda, Eritrea, and Uganda. Thank you for being with us, Yilma. First of all, tell us a little bit about your own experience. Why did you leave Ethiopia?
Well, I left my country like every African refugee because of my violation of human rights. I was arrested, tortured several times in and out of prison. Because of that, I have to flee to Kenya, refugee camp, where it's like in the middle of nowhere, where nature is playing its ugliest game. The food you are supplied by NGOs is not enough, and people are dying each day by malnutrition, by sanitation, and between 1991 and until the end of 1992, 3,700 refugees died. This is the accounted figure.
So this is at Kakuma?
Yeah.
Yep,
No. Before Kakuma, there was a camp called Walda.
Right. So in those two camps, then we're talking about nearly 4,000 people are dead.
More than 4. The account figure is also expected more than 2,000. Totally around 5,000 to 6,000 people died. And this death is unavoidable. It's happened because of the failure of the UN refugee organization, UNHCR, and other NGOs. And plus, on top of that, the government people coming across the border, killing refugees at night, going back, especially the Ethiopian government people. And in 1993, around March, a new camp called Kakuma is opened. Kakuma is well organized for the NGOs. They can monitor, they can control the refugee movement. And in that camp, it's just another way of prison. The wind is blowing every day. Nature is playing its ugliest game. People are still dying, suffering, and then you have nowhere to go. There is no means of communication with the other world. So it's not, prison is, sometimes the Western prison is much more better than the refugee camp in Africa. The Western prison has been, people have been testified their case, they have been in court, they know how long they are going to be in prison, whether for life or for a certain period of time. But you don't know when you are going to be free from that refugee situation. And there are also still government spies, people who are coming from the government angle to kill refugees. Refugees are dying by lethal weapon, by gun, or sometimes by being poisoned with food and everything. So it's not safe. There is no safe place for genuine refugees at the moment.
We've got a tremendous growth as well in the refugee population, particularly in Africa. We've got a lot of refugees who are also attempting to seek asylum, leaving Africa, leaving northern Africa, trying to travel across, often in unseaworthy vessels, into southern Europe, where people are subjected to a huge amount of brutality and quite a lot of racism along the way. Now, many of these people, like yourself, will have been politicized people. They would be political activists. One of the reasons people are leaving, is because people are politicized. People are politicized in some of these circumstances. Tell us a little bit. You've been telling us what kind of a little bit about some of the conditions inside of the camps, but one of the other issues is that effectively people are rendered stateless. They have no way to go back to their homes. Is that the situation for you? What?
Well, the blame lies not only in the brutal regimes.
Sorry, just come up a little bit closer to you, Mac.
The blame lies not only in the brutal regimes in Africa. It lies also in the Western countries who ignore the violation of human rights, who ignore what they do to their own people and give them aid, military support, security, everything they need to sustain them. For example, the Ethiopian government, the current government in power, has lived for 23 years. The US is the best ally for the Ethiopian government because the Ethiopian government is doing dirty war for the US and for other Western countries under the so-called AFRICOM. The AFRICOM is a war machine which is running African war for USA. And because of that, the human rights of the people violated. They have nowhere to go. Even nowadays, Western countries are not safe. New Zealand is not safe as other Western countries for African refugees.
The countries themselves, you're saying New Zealand is not a safe place for refugees.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about your own experience here as a refugee?
Yeah, and one example I can give you is there is an Ethiopian guy, a UK citizen, who was in UK for 30 years. He was trying to go somewhere, transited in Yemen. The Ethiopian government arrested him, took him back to Ethiopia from Yemen airport, sentenced him to death. And this much they are ignoring international law, and the world keeps quiet. So here they have their own people who came as the so-called family reunification, forced marriage, different reasons, who are going back and forth to the country, who are spying, dividing the community on the lines of ethnicity and religion. So nobody is safe. If you are a genuine refugee, I don't think I can go to Australia or move somewhere else, even for holiday, because they are following each and every step of your foot. You are not safe anywhere. And it's just with a couple of years ago, there was no problem in New Zealand. Now it has been 3 or 4, 5 years. People are coming the same process as they have been in other countries. In USA, they're killing people illegally, paying for the heat group. Also, sometimes they kidnap them. They take them up to Mexico, and then from Mexico, they will take them back to Ethiopia. And regarding the asylum seekers, it's the same issue. For the production of refugees in Africa, it's not only the brutal governments who are responsible. It's the West who is responsible. Because, for example, take Ethiopia. At the moment, including the area of Israel and Belgium, the farmers' land is given to Indians, Americans, Pakistanis, Russians, name it, farmers, for 90 years lease. The farmer being evicted